Hey guys, a while ago I played an absolutely crazy game against the AI-powered Scrabble bot BestBot as part of my 100 game rematch I'm currently airing on my channel. Now, this game featured a super complicated pre-endgame and endgame, and I think the play and the position that you guys currently see on your screen here that the bot made is definitely in the conversation for one of the most impressive plays made by a computer in Scrabble history. Now, one other crazy thing about this game I would be remiss not to mention is that it actually happened to be uploaded to my YouTube channel the very same day that I won the Scrabble Players Championship. And as most of you are probably aware, the Scrabble Players Championship this past summer came down to a very intense best-of-5 finals match between myself and fellow Grandmaster Ian Weinstein. All of the games were really crazy, but Game 5 in particular featured an absolutely mind-bogglingly complex pre-endgame and endgame. So then, as if that wasn't enough, then by virtue of my regular upload schedule, this game that I'm about to show you guys today gets uploaded to my YouTube channel within minutes of the conclusion of my finals against Ian. As a matter of fact, I believe it was actually uploaded while I was doing my post-match interview with the commentators on the live stream. So, pretty crazy sequence of events. Now, during the video that I posted on this game originally, I promised a future video breaking down this position. That was a bit delayed because I had other priorities, namely making the detailed video series breaking down all 5 of my finals matches against Ian Weinstein. Please check that out, by the way, if you haven't already. I think it's really cool. And also just making a bunch of other recap videos from some awesome games that happened this summer. But now I finally have time to go over this game, so I'm super excited, and let's go ahead and jump right in. So here's the situation, guys. It's BestBot's turn. It's holding a rack of BOOQSTU, and it's up 6 points, 410 to 404. The unseen tiles to BestBot are fairly clunky, EHIK, PU, and 2 Ys. With 8 unseen tiles, that means from BestBot's perspective, there is 1 tile in the bag, and there are 7 tiles on my rack. Of course, where this gets complicated is that BestBot doesn't know what the 1 tile is in the bag, and thus doesn't know what it's going to draw after it makes a play in this position. So that makes it a little bit difficult for BestBot to plan. And that's a big reason why on my last turn I made the play of MOI for 18 points. I didn't want to play more than 2 tiles because I didn't want to empty the bag and give BestBot full information. It's worth mentioning that that's another fiendishly complicated position, and one that I very well may have gotten wrong. That being said, I won't be discussing it in detail in today's video because I already have so much to talk about on this turn for BestBot here, and I don't want this to turn into a 2-hour video. So, moving back to BestBot's turn here, the obvious play here would seem to be Sook for 42 points, hooking the S onto wrong. Now, this looks great for a number of reasons. Number one, 42 is a lot of points. This puts BestBot up by 48 points, and while I do have some fairly high scoring tiles on my rack, probably a couple 4-pointers, maybe the 5-point K, there doesn't really seem to be anywhere on this board for me to use them for a massive score. And also, number 2, BestBot gets rid of its Q, which is key, because if BestBot isn't efficient in getting rid of its Q, it could actually end up stuck with it in the endgame, which at this closest score would almost certainly result in an instant loss. So getting rid of the Q makes a lot of sense for BestBot here, and scoring 42 points also makes a lot of sense. However, as crazy as it sounds, this is not what BestBot did, and this is not BestBot's best play. In this position, BestBot did play Sook, but it didn't play Sook for 42. It played Sook for 18 on the bottom, hooking abs. So BestBot sacrifices a whopping 24 points here. And why? What exactly is BestBot accomplishing by playing Sook down here? And at first glance, the answer appears to be not much. There's no huge scoring play that BestBot's blocking that I might have, and there's nothing that BestBot is trying to set itself up for on the next turn. And this right here, guys, is what makes this play so genius. It's not some super flashy, crazy 12-letter word that only a computer would find. That's not why I think this is one of the greatest Scrabble pre-endgame plays we've ever seen. It's because it's so counterintuitive. You can play the same exact word for 24 more points, and it really doesn't seem to be worse positionally. So why are you giving up 24 points? Well, the reason is, as we'll see, well, there's several reasons, but the biggest reason is that BestBot isn't blocking any huge scoring plays by playing Sook on the bottom. But if BestBot plays Sook on top for 42, then I am going to be able to unload a bunch of tiles by hooking my Y on AB to make a buy and playing something horizontally. And even though I'm not scoring all that much, it's important for BestBot to block it, because if BestBot blocks it here, then my tiles are clunky enough that I'm actually, in most cases, almost guaranteed to get stuck with something in the endgame. And after BestBot gets rid of its Q, it should be able to unload all of its tiles in most situations and not get stuck. And if I get stuck with something and BestBot doesn't, then BestBot should be able to win. So that is sort of a high-level explanation of the idea here. But it takes a lot more than that to have the confidence to make this play. You have to go through all of the possible endgame sequences for both of these plays to conclusively determine which is better. And that's a lot of endgames. That is 8 possible endgames for each play, because there are 8 different tiles BestBot could draw. Here, actually, there's only 7 different endgames BestBot has to go through, because there are 2 Ys, and the same endgame will apply whichever Y it draws, but still, that is quite a lot. So 7 endgames to permute after Souk on the bottom, also 7 endgames to permute after Souk on the top. That is 14 total endgames BestBot must permute, and permute correctly. Also, these are really hard endgames, because on this kind of board, a board that's very closed, endgames tend to be more complicated because they're not the straightforward type you'd see on a more open board where people are typically going out within 1 or 2 turns. Here, it's probably going to take both myself and BestBot multiple turns to play out, at the minimum 2 and more likely 3 or even 4, and that's going to make calculations much more complicated and have different variations that the bot has to look at. So it would be so difficult without really heavy computing power to compute these endgames efficiently and accurately. I have a very hard time imagining myself or the vast majority of any other human top experts would be able to conclusively determine over the board under any sort of time constraint that playing Souk for 18 points is actually better than playing Souk for 42. However, in this video, I'm going to exhaustively show you guys why this seemingly crazy 24-point sacrifice is actually worth it. As it turns out, BestBot's play of Souk for 18 never loses. It wins if it draws E, H, I, P, U, or one of the 2 Ys. The game will actually be a tie if BestBot draws the K, assuming optimal play on the endgame from both sides. However, the same cannot be said of the 42-point Souk. It turns out that if BestBot were to have played Souk for 42 and drawn the P, then it would actually lose. Any of the other 7 tiles would win, but drawing the P after Souk amazingly means that BestBot would lose. So that is why Souk for 42 is a mistake, because it only wins 7 out of 8, whereas Souk for 18 wins 7 out of 8, but ties on the 8th draw out of 8. So it's technically, we would say, a 7.5 out of 8 win, which is undeniably better than 7 out of 8. Now, I'm going to, like I said, systematically go through all of these endgames, some of them in more detail than others, because some of them are just more interesting, but let's start first with what actually happened during the game. After BestBot's play, it ended up drawing the U, and I had this rack, E, H, I, K, P, Y, Y. Now, in this position, my highest scoring play is Ye for 38 points, hooking the E and the H to make Aid and Oda. This scores so well because it puts the H on the triple letter score in both directions, so I get 6 times the value for the H. This is the play I made, and it is indeed my best play in this endgame, which makes sense. It scores well, which I need to do. I'm down 24 points, and it also gets rid of 2 of my 5 3+ point tiles to at least reduce the chances that I end up unable to play one as the endgame progresses. In this position, BestBot made a strange play. It played Cog for 12 points. This is its best play, of course, no big surprise, since BestBot is known to be perfect on endgames, but definitely surprising at first that Cog works out better than something like Oot in the same spot, which scores 13 more points and also gets rid of 2 more tiles. It's really instructive to see why Cog ends up being better, so I'll return to this play of Oot later on after we're finished discussing the actual play of Cog. But in any case, after Cog, with IKPY, I played Yank for 11 points, figuring I might as well get rid of my most difficult tiles to get rid of first, and then hopefully I'll be able to play the I and the P in some order on my next couple of turns and go out and win. And here, BestBot plays TI to the I in anti-mirror for 2 points. And it was at this point that I realized I was in trouble. Because what BestBot has done here by playing the T is I am now P stuck. Yes, guys, you heard that right. I have nowhere on this board to play the P, and that applies even though I also have an I on my rack. Usually, when somebody gets stuck with a consonant, they end up stuck when they don't have any other vowels they can use to help play off the consonant. But here, even though I have a vowel along with my P, there is literally nowhere for me to play off my P on my next turn. My best play, which I made, is to just play off the I with TI and SI for 8 points, and I am up by 9 here, but the problem is BestBot can now just play off one tile at a time because I'm going to have to keep passing. And BestBot will be able to unload all 3 of its remaining tiles like such. Roo for 7, I passed. Oi for 8, I passed again. And finally, BestBot goes out with Bye for 7 and won this game in absolutely incredible fashion, 470 to 461 with the help of a P-stick. So that begs the question, then in this position where I played Yank for 11, maybe I should have gotten rid of the P first. Well, the problem is that's actually not going to work either. The most logical play that gets rid of the P is Pry for 16 through the R and murines. But the problem after this is that now I'm going to get K stuck, because my only spot for the K is the same spot that I would have had for the P, namely KI to the I in anti-mirror. So BestBot is going to do exactly as it did in the actual game. It's going to just play TI for 2 points. And I'll leave you guys to check that following a similar sequence, BestBot is going to play off one tile at a time, and after getting 10 points additional for my K as a penalty, BestBot will win the game narrowly. So this doesn't work either. But there are a few other interesting options to look at too. How about ERK for 14 points? Maybe the Y is a little bit more flexible than the I to help me get rid of my P. Also, if I play ERK, I actually now have 2 P spots, because not only do I have PI to the I in anti-mirror, I also have PAN, because now by not playing Yank, I've left the AN open. So would this work? It turns out no, because after I play ERK, BestBot would respond with UT and TAN for 5 points. And the idea behind this play is I do still have my P spot over here for 4, but now I am Y stuck. As crazy as it sounds, there is now nowhere on this entire board for me to play the Y. So after I play PI for 4, BestBot is going to play off its B and its O in succession. It does have a single spot for its B with Web for 8, and after this and playing off its O, it will win handily. The only other option I think it's worth really looking at for me is KI for 6, with the idea of trying to play Pry on my next turn. But this isn't going to work either, because now BestBot plays Herb for 10, blocking Pry. And here it's not too hard to see that I am going to end up stuck with one of the P and the Y. If I play any for 6, then I'm stuck with the P, and if I try to get rid of the P immediately with Pan, then I'm going to end up stuck with the Y, and in either case, it's easy to see with OT, BestBot is going to win the game handily. So, basically guys, what this means is that in this position where once again I played Yank and ended up losing after getting P stuck, there is nothing I can do. Whatever I play, I am guaranteed to get stuck with one of K, P, or Y. There's literally no play I can make that, based on BestBot's block on the next turn, I am going to be able to play off all of these tiles. So I am stuck here and I am lost. And that is the beauty of COG. It doesn't really seem to accomplish much, but BestBot doesn't need to accomplish much. All it needs to do is stall, wait for me to get stuck with something, and then pounce and win. Now, you may recall I mentioned a little while ago that in this position where the bot played COG, it could have also played OOT for 25. And this looks better at first. It scores 13 more points and gets rid of 2 more tiles. But it actually works out worse for the bot, because after this play, then I am going to respond with Pry for 16 points through the R in murines. This blocks the bot's only outplay of Herb through the R in the same spot. And now watch what happens. Because I have IK, as we saw in the actual variation that happened, I can get K stuck if the I in anti-mirror is blocked. So it seems that the bot here would want to play Bye for 4, sticking me with the K. However, the problem with this is now with a U, the bot only has one spot, namely us to the S and Aleph. So if I play if for 5, then BestBot is U stuck. So BestBot is U stuck, I'm K stuck. What's going to happen? Well, we're going to 6 pass, and then BestBot will lose 1 for its U, I'll lose 5 for my K. Remember, with a 6 pass scenario, with neither of us going out, BestBot doesn't get double the value for my unplayed tile as it did in the actual game since it doesn't play out itself. In this case, there's only going to be a single value penalty applied to my score, and BestBot itself is also going to lose a point. So I'm going to go down to 458, BestBot will go down to 456, and I'm actually going to win by 2 here, 458 to 456. So BestBot cannot K-stick me here. Instead, it could try playing its B for more points with Web for 8. But this isn't going to work either, because now I don't rush and play KI immediately and allow BestBot to go out with us, which would actually result in BestBot winning by 1, as I'll leave you guys to check. I'm going to play if first, and now BestBot is U stuck, and BestBot is powerless to stop me from going out with KI on its next turn, since it can't block it with its U. I go out for 6 and I win easily by 10. So that means to win here, BestBot absolutely must play us for 2 first to ensure it doesn't get stuck. After this, BestBot has multiple places for its B on this board. I can't block all of them, so I would just play off my K for 6. And now after Web, BestBot will hold on and win by 1 point, 465 to 464. So Oot is still a win for BestBot if it plays this sequence precisely, but it's a lot more of a nail-biter than the sequence was after Cog. And the key difference here, guys, is that even in BestBot's winning sequence, I didn't get stuck with anything. Remember after Cog, how no matter what I did, I was guaranteed to get stuck with one of my P, K, or Y? That wasn't the case here. I got all 3 of them down with Pry and then KI. So BestBot not only didn't get a lot more bonus points from catching me with one of these tiles, it also didn't have the luxury of playing off 1 tile at a time to accumulate a lot of extra points like it did in the variation we saw in the game after Cog. So really instructive position here. Oot still wins, but barely. Just dropping the O for Cog works out much better. So now the good news is we have shown why in the original position, if the bot plays Sook for 18 with abs, it wins if it draws the U as it did in the actual game. But the bad news is that's only 1 of 14 possible endgames. Remember, there are 7 endgames we have to look at after Sook on the bottom, and 7 endgames we have to look at after Sook for 42 on top, hooking wrongs, which, like I said earlier, is the much more obvious and seemingly more intuitive play. Now, don't worry, I know the video is already 20 minutes and I'm not going to spend 20 minutes in all of these different endgames. The only other ones I want to go through in significant detail are the tying endgame after BestBot's play of Sook, namely when it draws the K, and also the losing endgame after the 42-point Sook when the bot draws the P. Let's go through these next, and then we'll go through the other ones after much more quickly. Let's start with what happens if the bot draws the K after playing Sook on the bottom. In this case, I'm going to have EHIPUYY, and as I did in the actual game, I'm going to respond with yeah for 38 points, taking a 14-point lead. Now with BKOOT, the bot has a few reasonable options. The most obvious one at first of ebook for 12 points clearly isn't going to work, as I am going to respond with yip for a massive 35 points under the O and the K, winning easily. Another option that looks very reasonable is grabbing 25 points with oot. This would bring BestBot to an 11-point lead. However, the problem here is now I can play any for 6 and the bot is going to get stuck with one of its B and its K. Note that I have to play any instead of something like Pry, because if I don't block that AN, BestBot will go out with Bank and win on its next play. So I play any for 6, and now here's the problem. The bot only has 1 spot for its K, namely KI for 6. If it doesn't play there immediately, I'm going to drop my P with PI for 4, K-stick it, and win. So this play is forced for the bot, but now it only has 1 B spot, namely AB, from the A in Tanidia. So all I have to do is play AI for 2 here. And now BestBot is B stuck. So BestBot passes, I go out with up for 12 and win easily, 468 to 459. So oot here is not the play that ties for BestBot. It's bank first. This prevents the bot from being stuck with anything. And now a rather arduous sequence ensues that requires precise plays on both sides to achieve the tie. With the bot having oot, I absolutely must block its 25-point outplay down the K column, and as such, I play gyps for 10. Note that this also stops oot on the right, making of an OS next to aleph. So this prevents the bot from going out, and I take a 14-point lead. The bot now has to stop me from going out with my I and my U with PU from the P in gyps, and it does that by playing opt for 12. I'm now up 2, I can't go out, so I might as well score as much as I can with TI and SI for 8. And now the bot goes out for 8 in either of two spots with OR and OP, or with no and OI. It doesn't matter which one it chooses. And after that, the bot will get 2 additional points from my unplayed U, and the game will end 460 to 460. This would be the optimal sequence for both players if the bot plays Sook on the bottom and draws the K, which once again results in a tie. The K draw, as I mentioned earlier, is the only thing that doesn't win for BestBot after Sook on the bottom. It results in a tie. Every other draw the bot could possibly get will result in a win. Now, the question you guys are probably still dying to have answered is, well, what about the other Sook? We haven't really spent any time looking at Sook for 42, which, as I've been mentioning all along, is somehow not the best play. I've mentioned how this loses for BestBot if it draws a P. How on earth does this lose if BestBot draws a P? Well, let's take a look. With a rack now of EHIKUYY, certainly not the best looking rack, and down at 48 points, it feels hard to imagine that I'm going to be able to come back. I can score once again 38 points with Yeah, which would bring me to within 10, but with IKYU, I'm not going to have much to do on my next turn, and I will lose. My winning play here is the simpler looking high for just 29, saving both Y's and the K on my rack. So what is the idea here? Well, the idea is these 5 letters I leave on my rack actually make a word. Yuki, Y-E-U-K-Y, is valid, and I am threatening to play that on my next turn as an outplay with a buy. And amazingly, BestBot cannot stop it. With BOOPT, BestBot is unable to hook AB and also unable to block my out threat of Yuki in any other way. It's worth mentioning that Rebop doesn't work because OY and PE are valid, so Yuki would actually score even more, and Reboot doesn't work because OY and TE are both valid, so once again I could play it to the triple word for a lot of points. And there's no way for the bot to play a word long enough down from the letters in Murines that would obstruct my out threat. So here, all the bot can do, amazingly, is play off 2 tiles for 10 points with something like Orb. After that, I of course play Yuki for 24 as an outplay. I get 10 additional points from the bot's unplayed O, P, and T, and I actually win by 5, 467 to 462, in absolutely incredible fashion. Despite being down 48 points with a seemingly horrible rack in the original position, I have a very high-scoring 2-turn sequence that cannot be blocked, and the bot has shockingly few good plays with its rack of BOOPT, and I will be able to eke it out. It's worth mentioning I absolutely have to get the move order right. High has to come first. If I play Yuki first, then I do not win. The reason is because even though I'm now threatening high in 2 spots, both with Oda as I played during the game, and also under the U and Q and Sook with high and Chi, which scores 29 as well, I now allow the bot to get rid of more tiles and score more points, namely Bop for 14 above the Y and Yuki. This scores 4 more than Orb, and also gets rid of the P, which is going to reduce the bonus I get by 6, and this will be enough for BestBot to win. I go out with either high for 29 points, it doesn't matter, and when all is said and done, BestBot now wins by 5, 466 to 461. Of course, it also goes without saying that in the original position, I can't play this high, because that would give BestBot big plays down the O column hooking hip. The bot could play pot and hip, and that would easily be enough to outrun Yuki, as I'll leave you guys to check. So once again, my only winning play in this position is high and Oda for 29 points, saving an unblockable Yuki and winning by 5. So that establishes, guys, why in the original position, Sook for 42 points is not a guaranteed win for the bot. Once again, if it draws the P, if I find my one winning endgame, I will win the game by 5 points. We also did establish that BestBot's actual play of Sook for 18 on the bottom is not a guaranteed win either. That being said, it doesn't lose, because even if the bot draws its worst tile, namely the K, then after the fairly long and drawn out sequence we looked at a couple minutes ago, the game will end in a tie. Now, we've still only looked at 3 of 14 possible endgames. After Sook for 18, we've looked at the actual sequence during the game where BestBot drew a U, and also the tie sequence where BestBot draws a K. After Wrongs and Sook for 42, we've only looked at the losing sequence, namely the bot drawing the P. I'm not going to go through all of the possible endgames after the 42-point Sook in detail, because it's not that hard to see that if the bot draws anything other than the P, I'm going to have an impossible time winning. Because as we saw, in order to win, I'm going to need a very high-scoring 2-turn sequence that plays out. And that's going to require a play down the F column hooking Oda and a play on the bottom hooking a bye. I'm not going to be able to start with a play under the U and the Q on the 7 row because that's going to give too much counterplay down the O column. And there are simply no other racks I could have that yield a play like HI or even YEH down the F column that are going to leave me an out that plays on the bottom. And if I can't go out in 2, I'm definitely not going to be able to win. So again, going to spare you guys all the details here. It's not that hard to check that for each of the other draws besides the P after Sook for 42 points, the bot is going to win quite comfortably. Now, it's a little bit less clear-cut to see that if the bot plays Sook for 18. We've already looked at 2 possibilities here, namely, if the bot draws the K, it'll end in a tie, and if the bot draws the U as it did in the game, then the bot will win, but it's a very complicated endgame that results in a tile stick on my side. Now, most of the other endgames are not quite as complicated, and I will go through all of them, but I'll definitely go a little bit faster than I did when I went over the other 2 endgames. So let's go in order. Let's say the bot draws the E. This one is going to be fairly straightforward because I'm going to have a really inflexible rack and the bot's going to be able to go out in 2 pretty comfortably. With HIKPUYY, my best bet is simply to play high for 29 points. The bot has many wins here. Oot for 25 is probably the most straightforward, but actually this is not the best win because with BE, I would be able to stop the bot from going out, and if instead the bot plays Oot for just 7 points to the right of the G and Wrong, then it's guaranteed to be able to go out on its next turn because of a pretty clever setup. With Oot here, the bot is now threatening Gobs and B on its next turn, inserting between Go and the S, and that would score pretty well. That would score 17 points. My best bet is to block this setup with OK for 16, but now the bot just goes out with B for 8 points, and it's still down, but it gets a boatload, specifically 24 points from the unplayed tiles on my rack, and it wins easily 467 to 449. So that disposes of the possibility of the bot drawing an E in the original position after its play of Sook for 18. That wasn't too hard. Let's see what happens now if the bot draws the H. Well, this is also going to be a fairly straightforward win for the bot, because now I don't have the H to score well with hooking Oda. And the bot is still threatening to play Oot down the K column for a lot of points, so my best play here is actually to play Reek for 12, blocking Oot, and also trying to play something with Reiki on my next turn. It's a cool idea, but it's still going to fall well short. Because now the bot is the one who has the H and scores well with Oda, getting 29 points, further increasing its lead to 41. I could just play Yip or Yup immediately. It's actually a little bit better for me to play Guys for 8 first, though, because Riki and Yip is unblockable. The bot plays Orb for 10, and now finally I go out with Riki and Yip, but it's still nowhere near enough. The bot will hold on and win by 20, 467 to 447. So another fairly stress-free win for the bot in the original position if it draws the H after Sook. How about if it draws the I? Does that make things a little bit more interesting? Well, the answer is a little bit, but it's still a fairly straightforward win. I'm going to play Yeah for 38, as I have in so many other variations, and as the bot did in the actual game, it's going to respond with Cog for 12. Now, the idea here is that the bot is actually threatening to go out with OS and OBIT on its next turn. and it's extremely difficult for me to block this. Because if I try to play next to the S myself, with up, let's say, the bot goes out anyway with op and obit down the M column. So there's actually no good way for me to block this. The only way that I can possibly stop obit is to play us for 2 points. And this is simply not going to work. Because as in the actual game, I'm going to get stuck with at least one of these 3 high-scoring tiles. The bot is simply going to play buy for 4, and now I'm in big trouble. If I play yank for 11, then I'm going to get stuck with the P, and if I play pry for 16, I'm going to get stuck with the K, so I am completely lost. So in this position, my best play is actually to just play yank and let the bot go out with obit. But that'll be a pretty easy win when all is said and done. A 9-point victory, 462 to 453 for BestBot. It is worth mentioning that while Cog does win for the bot in this position, Oot actually would lose even though it scores 13 more points. The problem with Oot is now if I respond with yank for 11, the bot cannot go out holding BI, and I have 2 outplays on my next turn with PU. I can play ERP through the R and Murines, and I can also play up and us on the top right. And the bot cannot go out itself or block both of these, so all it could do is play buy for 7, I go out with up for 12, and I would actually win the game by 7, 467 to 460. So just yet another example of why the bot needs to be very careful in this position, regardless of what it draws, about playing Oot for 25. Sometimes it can get away with it, but sometimes, depending on what its last tile is, it might end up losing the bot the game. Cog, as I mentioned, though, is a win, so the bot does still get the win if it draws the I after Sook. It just has to be a little bit careful. So yet another win for BestBot after this play of Sook when it draws the I. This one's a little bit complicated. It still has to come up with that play of Cog for 12, but it's still a little bit more straightforward to calculate than the actual line during the game or drew the U. So we only have now 2 more to look at. We've looked at EHIK, we looked at U earlier. We just have to look at P and Y. So let's move on to what happens if the bot draws the P after this Sook. Recall that drawing the P was the one way the bot could lose after playing Sook for 42. Is that going to be a problem here? Well, not so much, because now after this Sook, the problem is my winning plan after the other Sook, namely playing Oda and High followed by Yuki and Abai, doesn't work, because now after this Sook, Yuki and Abai is no longer available. And this right here, guys, is part of why this 24-point sacrifice of Sook on the bottom is so important. Not only does it just make it a lot more difficult for me to play off a lot of tiles in general, it specifically blocks one very dangerous 2-turn sequence that outruns even the 42-point Sook. So the case of the P is the most important reason why Sook for 18 is a better play. And it's just so hard to see that on the surface without diving deep into all of these different variations. So let's see now how BestBot holds on and wins if it draws the P after the 18-point Sook. As we've seen in so many variations, I'm going to respond with yeah for 38 points, this time holding IKUY. And now the bot plays opt for 9 next to the G in wrong. Note that Oot for 25 actually loses here, because with BP the bot cannot play out. I play yank for 11, and then after the bot plays buy for 7, I have a sneaky outplay now of etwi from the et on the board that the bot has formed with Oot, and I actually win by 4, 464 to 460. So the bot needs to be very cautious on this turn. There are a few winning plays, Oot is not one of them. Opt for 9, as I said before here, turns out to be best, with the idea similar to what we saw a couple variations ago of setting itself up for a high-scoring outplay of gobs and bow. And after opt, there's not a whole lot I can do to block this outplay the bot has set up. It's also not really worth it because the bot can go out elsewhere on the board. I'm best off just playing yank for 11 to shed my Y and my K. The bot goes out for 19 and wins by 7, 460 to 453. So a close one, but a win nonetheless. So it's not like the bot needed to do anything flashy to win after the lower scoring placement of Sook to win with the P. All it needed to do was play down here so that I don't have my super high scoring 2-turn out sequence. Just the fact that I didn't have an outplay after my high scoring H play was enough to make up for that 24-point difference. So super instructive variation here. And with that, we only have one more to look at because we've already looked at the U. That's what actually happened during the game, and the bot did hold on and win. And last but not least, what happens if the bot draws one of the two Ys after Sook? In this case, it turns out my best play is actually not Ye. High works out just a little bit better because it saves the Y for me to play Pry through the R in Murines on a future turn. As we'll see, High is still not enough to win though, because after this, the bot can now safely respond with Oo. We've seen Oot be a dangerous play for the bot in some other variations. Sometimes it still holds on to win, sometimes it actually loses. In this case, it's fine because the bot actually cannot get stuck with its B and its Y. The problem is there are simply too many spots for me to worry about. There's this E in overrules where the bot can fit either the B or the Y. There's the I in anti-mirror where the bot can play the B. There's the AN where the bot can play the B with ban or the Y with any. And there's the A in Tenidia where the bot can play either the B or the Y after it. And this is simply too many different spots for me to try to block. So I'm going to be unable to stick the bot. My best play here turns out to be Kane for 8 points, saving Pry on my next turn, but it's not enough. The bot drops the Y for 5, I play Pry, and now the bot goes out for 4 and would hold on to win by 7, 464 to 457. It is worth mentioning though that if I play Ye in the original position, the bot will win by more if it plays optimally, but it has to be a little bit more careful because now it cannot play Oot. Because now that the E in overrules for BE or YE is blocked, I can play up for 9 here. And now the problem is, I've saved Urk through the R in Murines for my next turn, and the bot will be unable to stop it. So the bot will just play Web for 8, and now I go out with Urk for 14 and win the game by 12, 473 to 461. So the bot does need to be a little bit more careful if I play Ye. But instead of Oot, it can win the game fairly easily by playing Buy for 11 first, getting rid of the troublesome B and Y, saving Oot as a threat that I'm going to have to deal with on my next turn. And now the problem is the bot is not only threatening Cog and Oot, it's also threatening Oot next to the F and S and Aleph as an outplay. And the only way I'm going to be able to stop both of them is Gyps for 7, and that is simply not going to cut it. Because now, as we've seen so many times, BestBot is going to drop its T for 2 next to the I in anti-mirror, and I am K-stuck. So all I can do is play my U. I have 2 places to play it for 7, either Ru or Emu, it doesn't really matter. So I will play Emu for 7, and now I'm K-stuck, so the bot doesn't even need to go out with Poo. Poo would win by 2, but it gets more spread by just dropping an O first, I pass, and then dropping its other O for 8 points and winning the game by 12, 468 to 456. So, in the original position, Sook for 18 does win if the bot draws one of the 2 Ys. There's definitely a pitfall or 2 to watch out for, as there are in all of the variations, but it will win fairly comfortably if the bot plays correctly. So there you have it, guys. That is an exhaustive review of all of the possible endgames after the 18-point Sook. Once again, the bot drew a U during the game and won, and it would have won with every draw except a K, which would have resulted in a tie. The 42-point Sook with wrongs, again, by far the more intuitive-looking play, given it scores 24 more points, as we reviewed in this video, loses to High and Yuki if the bot draws a P. I didn't look at all of the other variations, but I actually don't need to prove that this is a worse play. That's the beauty of how this logic works, because once I establish, as I did now conclusively, that Sook and Abs wins 7.5 out of 8 times, I know that if this play even loses 1 out of 8, then it has to be worse, because without even reviewing all of the other endgames conclusively, I know that this play wins at most 7 out of 8, given it loses 1 out of 8. Now, like I said, as it turns out, it wins pretty comfortably with all of the other 7 draws. That's not that hard to see, but it is really hard to see that this does indeed win 7.5 out of 8, which is part of why I think this play is so remarkable. There's just so many reasons why this play is so remarkable. At first, seemingly pointless 24-point sacrifice, and like I said, just so many different endgames, 7 to be specific, that you have to work out precisely. A lot of these two really complicated with so many variations involving possible sticks on both sides, and you have to work these out precisely and efficiently in order to have the confidence to make this play. So really, really impressive stuff there from BestBot. Given what was in the bag, either Sook would have won, but this play undeniably better. Again, winning 7 out of 8 and never losing, only tying with 1 draw, as opposed to the other Sook possibly losing with 1 out of 8 draws. So really remarkable stuff here. Like I said, I think this would be a super tough play for any human to make over the board. I don't know if I'd even be capable of doing it, especially if I were under time pressure. Maybe Nigel Richards would have been able to. I have no idea. But in any case, absolutely remarkable stuff. And to me, guys, this just shows you that, yes, of course, even the best computers do have certain weaknesses over humans, like maybe not being as adaptable to playing with inferences, at least yet. But this is why I think, especially as computers continue to improve, that they are ultimately going to have an edge if they don't already. Because this kind of brute force calculation that you can do if you have an efficient and well-supported computer algorithm is just so far ahead of what the human brain is capable of accomplishing in any reasonable amount of time. So that's it for this one, guys. Really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a lot and it was intense, but I hope it was not too hard to follow. Let me know as always what you think. Really hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for all your support. I'll see you soon for the next one. Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.